Happy Thursday afternoon, my folks. For all of you guys trickling in, hopefully I'll have my guests jumping on here and joining us in a moment. But this is a very special treat. I don't normally do live streams or private webinars anymore unless people are paying for them. So this is obviously a free private webinar with two amazing researchers. And then, of course, Rebecca Taylor-Shaw, who is one of the world's leading hypnotherapists and also a personal friend of mine who I've done many shows with for some of you guys that know. So as people begin to come in here and trickle in, I think we have like 11 or 12 people watching live, and hopefully we'll have a bunch more. This show is being recorded, of course, so I will record for posterity's sakes. Let me see if anybody is actually a guest that should be a panelist, because the Zoom interface sometimes does that. So I do see Stephanie Rimka. What's up, Doc? And I see Sean, and I see Ruth, and I see Peter, and I see Judith all the way live from Australia. Jason, James, what's going on? Gary, Bruce, Terrence, a bunch of new folks in here tonight. So you guys, I promise you this will be an absolutely profound show. I have interviewed Jerry and Sherry previously. And they are amazing. Speaking of the one and only Jerry Marzinsky. What's up, Jerry? How are you, bud?
Hey, Jay, I wasn't sure I was going to make it here with all those emails and click on this and register that. And this doesn't work. Push this button.
I apologize. It's definitely confusing for with Zoom because, you know, there's a registration link for the public and then there's like the panelist link. But, you know, I apologize. And, you know, I do so many broadcasts and talk to so many people, you know, that I sometimes forget that I'm not very clear and like letting people know. But it's cool because I mean, you know, we got right now like 14 people watching us. And you know, there's I think we have like 62 registrations for the webinar, which is great. So obviously all of those people will get access to the recording if they don't watch it live. But I'm just gonna wait for Sherry and Rebecca to jump in here. But so like, what's going on with you right now in your life and stuff like that? Like what new stuff? I mean, obviously, I know you're deep into this. I actually had a podcast today with a guy who's in Germany, and we actually, of all things, and again, the universe, there's no coincidences, but we wound back around to talking about what we're going to talk about tonight. And at the very end of the podcast, I said to him, I said, you know, this is interesting because I'm actually talking to two researchers about that very same thing. And he said, who are they? And I said, Jerry Marzinsky and Sherry Swiney. He's like, you got to be kidding me. He's like, I refer to their book all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a small universe.
Yeah. Well, I started at Sherry's recommendation because I was getting so many people writing me. What do I do? What do I do? How do I do it? What can I? So I started a private practice, and it's been going pretty well.
That's awesome, man.
You know, we've had a handful of people completely recover, which shows that it could be done. A lot more have gone, okay, I got enough. I got this. I can handle it on my own, and they take off on their own. You know, it's people, they need to know that these voices aren't them, you know,
Yeah.
and psychiatry is doing the very opposite of that. Of their hallucinations, your brain is broken, you got a chemical imbalance, which is all a lie.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, okay, what can I do? Well, you can't do anything except take our toxic meds. You know, it's crazy.
Well, I mean, I'm going to ask you guys some pretty deep questions tonight. We actually have some people in the brain and behavioral sciences watching the show right now live, you know, pretty renowned, who actually also is a close friend of mine, Dr. Stephanie Rimka. She's watching. I mean, I know she's, at least I see her in the audience. So there'll be probably some really amazing questions that we can probably throw back and forth. And by the way, she's one of us. She's not part of the psychiatric mafia, as you call them. I love that. But I mean, I'm going to ask you, you know, you ask all of you guys, and obviously Rebecca is also very qualified to talk about this, but who is behind the psychiatric mafia? Because we know they have lackeys.
Big pharma.
Yeah, but who's behind big pharma is what I really want to know, because they obviously know what's going on. They know about these, you know, entities, interdimensionals, whatever you want to call it. And it's just, I mean, well, look, the other thing we can relate it to when, you know, these other folks join us is, I mean, what's going on in our politicians? What's going on in our leaders? I mean,
if you look at the list of traits that
Right.
that these things follow.
Right.
You know, and I've read them a number of times. I have them here today if we need them. Those traits match exactly what the mainstream media is feeding all of us right now.
Exactly.
There's a one-to-one correlation between what the crap they're putting out and what the psychotic voices are telling schizophrenics.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I definitely want you to share with those. You'll have access you should actually have, I'll actually give you access right now to share the screen. Let me just make sure. Let's see. Yeah, you're a co-host. So you guys should all be co-hosts, but you'll be able to share the screen. So you can just go down and hit share, and then you can just pull them up as long as you have it open on your desktop.
Well, I don't. I can read them out. I'm not quite sure.
Why don't you forward them to me if you have them on an email, and then I can share them while you're talking about it. Is that okay?
Yeah, I can do that. Let me plug in the card that has that on there. Okay.
So let me just text. I don't have Sherry's. Yeah, see, this is just typical Zoom. So when I first sent this out, just so you know, they know that we're doing this podcast today because they blocked the initial transmission. As you know, they're prone to do that too.
Yeah, I don't think I've had a single broadcast where something hasn't gone wrong.
Well, so Rebecca can't get in. She's texting me right now. I'm gonna actually send her. I can just get her in on this way, actually. But yeah, she can't get in. She's saying it's not letting me in. I'm like, well, no surprise.
Okay, here I'm sending. I just sent it to you.
Okay, cool.
So that's the listing, and those are valid for all over the planet. I mean, I've worked in a number of institutions all over. Hey, Sherry.
Hey, Sherry, how are you?
She's not connected with audio yet.
She's about to be there.
Yeah,
Sherry, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Hey, you.
Amazing to see you. So they are screwing with Rebecca.
Are they? Yeah, I had.
Were you being blocked, or did it let you right in?
Oh, I had some trouble getting on. Yeah.
Of course you did.
Of course. Yeah. Well, that's the way that goes.
That is the way that goes.
Yeah,
well,
the bad guys don't want to hear us talking about them. That's
no,
sure.
they really don't. It's funny. I was just telling Jerry before you came on that I did a podcast earlier today with a really awesome guy from Germany. And in the conversation, we swung back around to talk about this. I mean, it was literally like one of the bigger subjects. And I said, you know what, this is truly, profound, because as you know, there's no coincidences in the universe, only synchronicities. And tonight I'm actually doing a live stream with two brilliant researchers that talk about this. And he said, what are their names? And I said, Jerry Marzinsky and Jerry Swiney. He's like, he reaches behind him and says, I got their book. I read it all the time.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful.
Yeah. So it's crazy.
Yeah,
Jerry, it's a small universe.
Yeah. Did you get the recording that I sent you, Jerry, from that woman in Bogota?
Yeah, I called her.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I knew she was addressing you and not me, so that's why I sent it to you.
Well, she was thinking that you lived in some apartment complex right across the street from her or something.
Oh,
no, Sherry lives in Kentucky.
Yeah.
Oh, I want somebody physical to see my son. I said, okay, fine.
Okay.
Yeah. I love people like that. Like, oh, you can't talk to me over technology. No, well, sorry, can't help you. I'm not flying to you.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true.
This is so crazy. So Rebecca cannot log in. Well, I'd say we start because I want you guys to start presenting and talking. We're 8 minutes past.
Okay.
And we're going to go till about 7, maybe 7:05, maybe 7:10. Again, I want to be respectful of your guys' time. So why don't I'll start with both of you guys, but Jerry or Sherry, you guys can chime in. But just for the people that are not familiar with you, most of these people are, and most of these people have read the book, but maybe just give me a high level summary of what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Go ahead, Jerry.
Whatever you want to talk about. Fire the questions, we'll answer them.
Okay.
Well, okay. I was thinking that, since it's becoming more and more prevalent on the planet, just how dark things are getting,
Yeah.
And I believe that this is the dark side. I don't know if they came through from CERN or if they were just already here and all of a sudden they became more prevalent, or we became more aware of them, or whatever it is like that. But, there's a lot of people asking questions. Why is the world so crazy right now? And I think that we have the answer to that.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it has to do with the infiltration of the so-called leaders of this dark side that we're talking about. Hi, Rebecca.
Yeah, so she got in, but I had to promote her. So I mean, typical of Zoom. I figured I'd have to promote all of you guys. That it would just like, if you did get in, thank God you did. Jerry was in the waiting room for a long time, so there you are.
So a lot of your shows, Jay, talk about the vibrations and the low vibrations and the high vibrations, and how important that is, that we're all living in a frequency world, and we in fact ourselves are frequency.
Right.
We're frequencies. We're frequency beings. And so, the experiences that Jerry and I have had personally are probably more magnified than a lot of people have experienced. So we get to talk about it because we were there. We experienced these things ourselves. And so I thought maybe, we might kick that around for a while and see what happens.
Well, so Jerry just sent me the original patterns, which Rebecca, you were asking me about, and I didn't even see this. So I guess he probably did send it. And I'm so overrun with emails at this point in my life. So many people email me on a daily basis, which is a very awesome thing, but it's also a curse because I cannot respond to everyone. So I'm getting some weird update error on Microsoft, but it opened. That's another thing. Like every time you open a document, right? Like of a competing technology, who knows what they're actually doing to your computer and installing on your system so that they can listen to you. Okay, so I'm going to share a screen with you guys real quick on this. So this is the patterns list from Jerry.
Well, let me give a little introduction to these first.
Yeah, please do.
These voices are energetic entities. There is no space, there is no time, there is no material where they're at. So they can't be seen, they can't be measured. They're akin to a magnetic field. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. If you had a big magnet in front of you and you didn't know about it, you wouldn't even know there was a magnetic field present. It's just pure energy. But if you get a glass of iron filings, you put it on top of that magnet, you'll be able to see the magnetic field reflected in those iron filings. Well, these patterns are the same thing. Okay, you can't see these entities. You can't, most people can't hear them. There's no way to measure them. They're energetic. These are how they manifest in physical reality. These are the iron filings, if you will, of these things. And they run very fixed, repeatable patterns. Now, the psychiatric mafia is saying they're hallucinations. Hallucinations do not run patterns, especially predictable, repeatable patterns. Something is holding these patterns in place.
And that's something, Sherry, and I'll ask you too, Rebecca, is, in your opinion, what?
Go ahead, Rebecca.
I'd like to see the patterns before I would talk about that, because
I sent them over to Jay. He's got them.
Yeah, I have them. I'm going to share. I'm going to just go ahead and share a screen right now.
Yeah.
So you guys can see it. Can you guys all see that?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it big enough? I can zoom it if it needs to be, but can you guys read it?
No, it's kind of small.
Yeah, make it a little bigger.
Yeah, make it a little bigger. Yeah, that's better.
then
So scroll down to the items themselves.
Yep.
I think the beginning is an introduction that there, yeah.
Did you need to read any of that, Rebecca? Here, I'll just email it to you.
no, I just
Okay.
looking at the
Okay.
patterns. Do we have time, Jerry, for you to just like maybe highlight some of them? And I mean, I've definitely come across these, but I think I would give a more useful response Hearing,
Well, they're all valid. Some of them appear more consistently than others,
Mhm,
but they're all traits. They're all facets of these things.
mhm.
The voices are, 98% of what they tell people are negative, derogatory, insults, slanders, slurs. Now, if they tell you something positive, it's usually just to hook you into believing there's some kind of magical entity and that they can help you out. Then they get you in the back later. They'll tell people they're Jesus Christ or their guardian angel or something like that. Be real careful. They don't like preachers. They don't like religion. They don't like the 23rd Psalm. I think they don't like the 91st Psalm. I think it was. They don't like the Bible. They run interesting patterns when people go to church. If they're weak, they'll disappear. If they're moderate strength, they'll make a lot of noise so the person can't listen. If they're very strong, they'll actually drive them out of the church. So what kind of a hallucination would do that? They foster negative emotion. Virtually everything they say is aimed at generating negative emotional energy, which they then drain off. So they're parasites. They're parasitic entities. They have to create that negative energy before they can take it. And that's what they feed off of. That's why what they tell these people is consistently negative and horrible and terrifying.
Yeah.
So they energetically drain their victims. So, and I don't know how they do this, but I've had a number of patients say they could actually feel their energy leaving as these voices were attacking them.
Yeah.
They get louder after sunset. Usually between 3 and 4 in the morning, they get loudest. If the psychiatric mafia thinks they're hallucinations, so they tell their patient, oh, just ignore these things. No, they get louder when they're ignored. They will not be ignored. They foster self-destructive behavior, self-sabotage. They try to break people away from all their physical human relationships. They want the schizophrenic to seal himself in a room, lock the door, keep everybody out, and just listen to them. That's the worst thing a schizophrenic could do. They want them isolated so they have their full attention. They don't want to be interfered with. They constantly maneuver for increased control. They're constantly chipping away, trying to get control. They'll gaslight these patients. They'll tell them things that aren't true. They'll take something that's kind of neutral and they'll put a negative spin on it to make them think that, oh yeah, they can predict the future. And some of them can. I mean, I've had a number of prisoners who told me that the voices, when they ran out of meth, the voices would tell them where to be and when to be there to get more meth. And sure enough, they'd show up. Somebody would show up with the meth. They manipulate perception. They'll get you to interpret things that are happening around you in the worst possible light. What's really interesting is they have complete access to the schizophrenic's memory. They can go in there and they can pull up every rotten thing the person ever did and just rub it in their faces until they generate that negative emotional state.
And it's not just the schizophrenic's memory. It's everybody's memory. They can access all of our memory.
Well, so this is where I want to ask you guys a question. You guys are the experts. I'm just the guy that reads a lot, but I personally, and obviously I'm very introspective and contemplative and stuff too, but I personally think, and again, I know that I could be wrong on this, but in order for these entities, let's just call them entities for now, negative parasitic entities, to invade the human energy field, doesn't the person have to already be living in and again, I'm not saying that it's a personal choice, because a lot of people sometimes are just born into an environment that's just hell on earth. But don't they have to be already in some sort of low vibrational frequency for these beings to invade their energy field? Or do you think
no, not necessarily? I spoke to a preacher who's a fine guy. I mean, he was a top-notch preacher. He was standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and he heard these voices tell him, just jump, just jump.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's one time I was cutting cactus in my backyard. My dog was running around there, you know, a beautiful, you know, Alaskan, uh, you know, sled pulling dog kind of, and she ran by, and here's this thing saying, cut her head off, you know, and I'm like, what? No, any of everybody's experienced those kind of thoughts where you're just minding your own business and some horrible thought comes into your mind that just shocks you. It doesn't belong to you. You know, it doesn't belong to you. It's not anything you would ever do. No, they hit us all.
Yeah.
Well, here's one that's kind of common, I think, because it's happened to me. And then I was telling a friend of mine about it, and it happened to her too. And, you know, she didn't have the direct experiences that Jerry and I have had. But what happened was I was driving along, minding my own business, heading for somewhere. And all of a sudden, this idea came into my mind. It wasn't really a voice. It was just an idea. You know, I wonder what would happen if I drove into the oncoming traffic. Like, oh, no, I won't do that. But I would. I wrote to my friend about it, and she said, you know, the same thing happened to me. So I'm thinking that, okay, so they'll be putting those kinds of thoughts into your head all of a sudden out of nowhere.
That's
And
right.
you don't, it's like a normal person would probably say, well, you know, why would I do that? Right. But a person who is being hounded by these things or being very insecure about themselves or having an extremely bad day, they might just go ahead and do it.
Yeah. And there are people who committed suicide doing that. You know, they were kind of already on the brink, and these things are telling, yeah, just go ahead and do it. Nobody likes you. You're worthless. You're stupid. You have no purpose here. Just go ahead and do it. Kill yourself. Do it now.
Yeah, which is kind of strange because since they're parasites, you would think they would not want to kill their host. Right.
Well, that puzzles me too, because suicides or schizophrenics have a suicide rate, you know, significantly higher than the regular population. But, you know, what it does do is it creates an awful lot of negative emotional energy for the ones that do survive. It's not easy to kill yourself. And when you're thinking about it, it's a very nerve-wracking process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, so first off, I've never told anybody this, so I'm telling you guys this now, so all of you guys know this. And it's also my opinion. And Rebecca, you can speak on this. When I was younger in my early 20s, I remember sometimes laying in my bed in the mornings and I would have absolutely the most bizarre thoughts, like they were literally implanted in my mind of killing another human being. And I would shake my head like, what is going on? Like, where is this going? But I mean, I had these like bizarre, like macabre fantasies of taking somebody out, like literally like killing someone and like getting away with it. And it was literally like they were implanted into my mind. And no, before any of you guys ask, I did not take anybody out, right? But like, and if I did, I would tell you, right? But no, but I mean, like realistically, I had these thoughts myself. So I know what you guys are saying. And I'm sure a lot of people in the audience watching right now, and you guys can, you know, if you've had experiences like that, you know, feel free to put it in the chat. And I do see a question in the Q&A, and I'm glad somebody did that to remind me. If you are interested in talking to any of these three amazing people, please type your question in the Q&A. Do not put it in the chat or I will not get to it. But I know it's possible because I've experienced it myself. So would you guys then say that all human beings at various times in their life do experience these energies or entities in some form or fashion?
I would think so.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, it's like whether or not that bird is going to make a nest in your tree or he's just sitting there for a little bit.
Right.
You know, in my practice, so in clinical hypnotherapy for 28 years, you know, where I've come across these similar situations is people who have addictions. So to me, my sense is it's like every person is a life force. And if they can, you know, they'll jump on you. To me, I call it jumping like fleas. So if you live with an addict and that addict goes years and years and years of porn or drinking, and they do feed off of that negativity. They feed off self-loathing.
Yes.
And any kind of low vibration, emotion. They'll feed off the host until they basically suck the life out of it, the life force, the higher vibrations. And then when it's like, oh, I've sucked all the juice out of that orange, they'll try to jump to the next person. And sometimes they will to attack. I don't know if either of you have ever been attacked, but I've been attacked by them. I've also worked with satanic ritual abuse victims who typically have MPD, multiple personality disorder. I think many of them do have entities attached to them. I was working with a girl that grew up in a satanic cult that was masked as a Christian church in Mexico. And one of the first times I ever got attacked was just this little old lady who came into my office to do past life regression. And they will attack if they think, like what I've discovered with doing hypnosis. Hypnosis is kind of like the person lets their guard down. If that entity or those entities feel threatened, they will attack the person they feel is threatening the host energetically.
Yes.
And so with this other girl who we were working on, I was working with a Reiki master to do some clearing for her. That night I went home and I thought about killing myself, and it was like slitting my wrists and in the bathtub and just, you know, going away. And the next morning I was talking with the Reiki guy and it was like, so they will go into your data bank, into your memory. And so when I was a teenager, I grew up in an alcoholic home. I was depressed. I never tried to commit suicide, but I thought about it. So if for someone else, if they've thought about killing someone, if someone else has thought about like shooting themselves or hanging themselves, what I believe is they will find your deep, dark memory and they push it into your mind. So you think it's you thinking it, but you're not. And so that's something I want to say. If anyone is watching this and they've ever had that experience, and you're like, where did that come from? I was working with a guy who had these thoughts of killing his whole family and children, and we discovered it was an entity, which scared the crap out of him, by the way. But in a way, it's been useful because then he's like, oh, it's not me, you know. And he's like a normal, everyday investment banking, positive, happy guy, like you said, you know. But something somehow it got in and started to take root with him. And so that's some of the things that I've seen with people. And so for myself, what I did that was really useful is, first of all, you have to not be afraid of them, I think, because then they feed off your fear.
Yeah.
And second is you have to really get strong with your boundaries. Don't be drinking, partying, doing things that make you lower vibration. You have to stay high vibration.
Right.
And then I'm going to be crude here, but I just would, you know, the few times when they would come back around, I just tell them to fuck off and they're not invited here and they can't hang out here. So,
well, that's actually a good point, because we do as soul beings have sovereignty. And if we speak in a way that says you are, you know, if you're not here to serve or protect and you speak them out, usually, and again, my experience in talking to many, many people that have experienced what you're talking about, they will leave. But like Jerry said, and Sherry's dealt in experience, you guys have dealt with a lot of people in the penal system who have been obviously, you know, run down and, you know, downtrodden and just destroyed and decimated in so many ways. A lot of these people, as you know, aren't even guilty of a lot of the things they're committed or convicted of. And so they're just mentally like at a level where they don't really even have the internal power to speak these entities away. You know, it's more like they just put their head down and just say, go away, go away. They don't really have the ability. They don't feel strong enough about who they are as a being.
yeah.
Saying,
Well, plus in the prison system, the whole prison system is a feeding ground for
Right.
these entities, because the
Exactly.
energy is always low. It's I've never experienced it being a high vibration
right,
place,
of course.
because, you know, there's the things that go on in the prisons in the United States anyway, because I ran a prison reform human rights organization for a number of years. And so I got familiar with what happens inside the prisons. And the things that go on would, if they ever became public, the public would become outraged. But the few times that those things do become public, the public really doesn't want to hear it because it's too gruesome. You know, there's rapes, there's fights, there's stabbings, there's killings. There's just all kinds of really dark, nasty things that go on.
It's a hog troughs of negativity.
Yeah,
It's
they're pushed forward to, you know, to do more and more and more because these entities get more food, more energetic food from the negativity.
Right.
And now the thing that Rebecca was saying, that a normal person who has not necessarily been plagued by these things, I suppose they could just say, yeah, go away, you're not welcome here, and they would go away because there's no fear, there's no past background of being plagued, so to speak. But what I found in my own journey was that I had to realize that they are, like it says right here in front of us, they're consummate liars.
Mhm.
They will lie about everything. And so, and even Jerry said, if they do tell you the truth, there's something nefarious behind that truth that'll end up being a big lie.
So Jerry, in the context of, and Rebecca, you can answer this too, and very, very well said, Sherry. In the context of religion, and I don't really like to cross religion and spirituality because I sometimes think that they're different. I know that most people in religious, enclaves or practices, think they're spiritual, but sometimes they're really not because there's so much entrainment in man-made religion. But what do you think is the actual, are these entities? I know I'm asking you an opinion question, but do you think that they are demons in the mythological, overview or purview of like Christianity?
well, if you look at these patterns, what does it look like?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there's two things that Rebecca said that I want to emphasize because they're very important. Is one, when you're dealing with these things, you can't show any fear.
Right.
If you do, they got you. Second thing is for the victim to realize that those thoughts do not belong to them.
Right.
They were taught from the time we're kids that every thought that comes into your head belongs to you.
Totally.
That's
true.
far from true. And the first step in getting cured from schizophrenia is to realize that these thoughts, these negative entities that are speaking to you, those are not your thoughts. They don't belong to you. These are alien invaders. They're not part of you. They don't belong there. And they're parasites.
Yeah. And so what we were talking, again, I was telling you guys, I did a podcast today with a guy who will remain unnamed for now, but we were talking about this very subject, and we were talking about them as archons. And, John Lash Nam, I always pronounce his name wrong, wrote Not in His Image, the book about the Gnostic interpretation of these beings, and he actually declined them as twofold. And that is that they are what he calls neo-Gnotinous. So they're kind of amoeboid. And then they're the draconian, which, people would think of as like reptilian or, lizard or something like that. But that there were two classifications of these beings, and that they were interdimensional and they could invade your thoughts. And so, whenever I hear about that, and I read that book a long time ago, more than a decade ago, and now we're talking about this kind of stuff, I ultimately think, or I go back to, for the people that are familiar with the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, Thoth, / Hermes / whoever he is, this interdimensional, Atlantean, says that these beings are what turned Atlantis upside down, that they came and infiltrated mankind, mentally. Again, call them the archons, call them the invaders, call them whatever you want. And they were the reason that mankind collapsed, or that, the Atlantis fell. And so it's like, here we are now. You guys were saying, look at this planet right now. Our entire political structure is invaded. We have no truth, no honor, no morality, no integrity. It's all gone. Anybody with half a brain and a heartbeat can see that. Now, obviously, there's plenty of people out there now who are, V'd up 4 or 5 times that don't have any of those things. And that's, that's their excuse. But it's really interesting. I think we're on to identifying really the culprit of keeping humanity suppressed, to keeping the vibratory field, in the root chakra, and keeping people, as you guys said, in fear and shame. And, I'll just say this to you guys, and you guys can comment this. Rebecca knows this because she knows the story. But in 2019, in September, the guys that own the company, Focus Life Force Energy, And there are two very high-ranking disciples, call them initiates, of Dr. David Hawkins, who quantified the consciousness field, said that the collective vibration of the planet was at 230 in the end of September. And then obviously we know what happened, the great scam of all scams, the fear mongering of the C, which brought about the real bioweapon, which is the V. And then ultimately we've gotten to where we are now. But they said that within 9 months of that field being measured, and remember 243 was 7 points away from neutrality, which neutrality may mean that the matrix would have ended. And so they threw off this scam, and then they measured it 7 months later, and it was like 72.
Holy cow.
72 on the vibrational scale is grief. And that makes sense, right? I mean,
Yeah.
blown into COVID.
Sure.
And so I still speak to these guys. Again, the company is called Focused Life Force Energy, FLFE. A lot of these people that are watching probably are familiar with them, but they said that we're now somewhere between 175 and 195. So we're not back to the line of integrity. So consciousness collectively is still massively suppressed from where it was. So it's my guess, and you guys can comment on this, these dark side, the parasitic forces, whoever and whomever, whatever they are, pulled that off as kind of a last ditch effort to prevent the matrix from unraveling.
I think you're right on.
Yeah, I do too. And I think that the vibration is beginning to rise again.
It is.
From where it was. I think what happens is, it seems to me, if you look back in history, it seems like every time humanity gets to a particular point of high elevation and high accomplishments and so on like that, then all of a sudden something comes to make it just crash. Boom.
Yeah.
It's gone. We got to start over again. So, and Jerry and I have had this conversation a few times in the past of, have you ever felt like you've been fighting a war for lifetimes?
Yeah. I mean, I think all of us have been.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think every one of us has been many lifetimes, many incarnations, many times, and we've always fought on the side of truth, reason, justice, morality, integrity, think of all those different adjectives. And it's just how we all end up again speaking to each other, in some way. And, it's great that you said that, Sherry, because the guy that I spoke to today, he said that he doesn't know, but he's like, I wouldn't be talking to you and talking to others if I didn't think that we were still going to ultimately win. And that, he says that all we can do is continue. Well, so what he said, which I thought was fascinating, was that we all are here right now for a specific reason.
Mhm.
And it's to see it through that, how many lifetimes have we not seen it through? And have we been burned at the stake and, disemboweled, and all these things happen to us, to finally be here now, so to whatever is going to come. And, he just perceives that what is coming is a universal frequency, or, again, call it cosmic waves from the universe, that will eventually, for the people who are able to experience it and absorb these waves, raise their frequency or consciousness so much that the matrix will end. And those in the dark side, or, way down low, won't be able to actually even exist in the frequency state, because it will be so high vibrationally that they'll just, like a kind of like a bug on a fly zapper, and they just disappear.
I think one of the main tactics that they use to get away with that, with lowering the frequency, is number 21 here.
Yeah.
The voices try to pass themselves off as thoughts belonging to the victim.
Right.
I don't know how many patients I've had who would ask the voices, "Who are you? What are you?" And their response was, "We are you.
Right.
We are you."
We.
They want you to believe that your thoughts, whatever they put into your head, comes from you and is you. They don't want you to make that separation.
Yeah, when I asked that question, this goes way back decades ago, but I did this before I even met Jerry. And I said, who are you? And I got, "We are you." And I said, that's a lie. There's only one of me. How can there be a we in here? We are you? No, that doesn't make any sense, right?
Yeah, I've heard it a number of times.
Yeah, and then when Jerry said that his patients are saying the same thing, it's like, okay, so we're dealing with the same entity.
Well, I'll throw another one for you guys, and I'm sure all of you guys and everybody watching is familiar with this. But you remember in The Exorcist, the original Exorcist with Linda Blair, and I forget the father, there were two fathers, but the older, oh, it was Max von Sydow. So before the, Satan, the devil, whatever you want to call it, and that might be a mythical creature too. I mean, there might be a head demon or whatever, but at the end of the day, he said, the other father who was, mentoring under Max von Sydow said, Father, there appears to be multiple entities. And he says, there is only one. So they literally do come off as we are legion.
Yeah.
And it's like
Yeah.
all of these entities, call them demons, call them archons, call them parasites, whatever they are, amoeboid, neonatal archons, they act like they're a collective group. And the father was either leading us astray, as Hollywood is prone to do, or telling us that collectively they all do embellish or embody as one entity and tell
Well,
you
yeah,
they're we.
One thing's interesting is they're all over the planet. The people
Yeah.
I've worked with, they all over the United States, from Georgia, where the big psych hospital I worked in was, to Arizona. These patterns are the same.
Yeah.
For people in other countries, all over this country, it's like they're all made from the same cookie cutter.
Yeah,
these
and they're the
patterns are
same
the
back in
same.
history as well.
Well, let me ask you guys another question, because this is fascinating. And Jerry, by what you just said, it just triggered me. And maybe you might know too, Rebecca. What if the people who were V'd and heavily V'd in the last 1.5 to 2 years, and isn't that amazing that we're now 2 years into the vaccine?
Wow.
So
Crazy.
So think of that. What if those people were literally consciously turned off? Because look what Jerry's number 25 is. Attempt to pull their victim away from consensual reality. All of us right now, that's what we see with these people. We're like, what the fuck do you guys see in your life? Like, how can you be doing this? How can you listen to these liars tell you that this is good for you? What if those people, that's what they did? What if this entire scheme is a part of this, these beings that we're always talking to, acting as voices? What if they're all a part of the whole thing?
They are.
Yeah, they gotta be.
They definitely are. That was my point when we first started this interview. That's my feeling anyway. That's my observation, that these entities are infiltrating all these people. They're closing their minds to see reality. They're making them forget what they've heard before. I mean, when you think about the families that have been split up over this, where one side of the family says, no, you have to have this, and the other one says, no, it's not good for you. That's dangerous. And then the whole family will split up.
Well, it's not just family, it's friends,
Well,
it's all of society.
Exactly. But the point is, this is these archons, these entities at work. This is them at play. They're messing with the people's minds. They're masters of manipulating perception.
Well,
Rebecca, in your opinion, with all the people that you see regularly,
mhm.
how many of these people that are vaxxed? And see, I think we have to quantify this, because I don't think that a person who got one shot and then was like, oh my God, and then, went to our side of the fence is really as deep in the doo-doo or the weeds, so to speak, as someone who's just continually going and getting a booster.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So what are your thoughts on that, Rebecca? Do you think that this is part of the whole program to just completely turn people off for good?
Well, I think of it in a different way, in that anything in our society that creates polarity, strong hatred, strong for or against, it's not positive, so everything around it, whether you're against it or for it and you're wanting everyone else to get it, those aren't love vibrations
Right.
at all.
Right.
So any kind of polarized group, I do a lot of volunteer work for cancer survivors or people still going through cancer. I'm just going to say, like, the whole Susan G. Komen fight against breast cancer, when you're fighting against something,
Right, there you go.
It's a low vibration. So
Right.
I do look at it.
Infiltrated everything, Rebecca.
Yeah. I do look at it that way. So it's like abortion, gun violence, or gun, gun control. Those things I believe will never come to a meeting of the minds, because it's the anger, the pushing against, the fighting against, the resentment, is what they feed off of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, in my practice, one thing I will say, and I don't know if you, Jerry or Sherry, have come across this, but I have come across a couple clients. One had a porn addiction, and one was just coming to try to recall early childhood memories. But I'll talk about the one who he had been a successful world-class DJ, and he lives near me now, and but through our work, the entity came forward, and it was the freakiest, creepiest thing I've ever heard. And it was like this reptilian snake sound. And but here's the interesting thing. That guy was aware of him. We tracked back where it came from. When he was a little boy, he was severely beaten by his grandfather all the time. And the entity came into him. And when he was 6 years old, he said to his grandfather, "If you hit me again, I'll kill you." And the grandfather didn't touch him anymore after that. So, and then when he got older and he got into some, bar fights and, back alley fights and things like that, I've met a few people, they know they have the entities and they don't mind that they're there. It's a, they see it as a situation where, okay, I want that part, because if I'm in a deadly life or death threatening situation, this entity will come into me,
Protect me.
and protect me.
And that's especially true in the prisons. They would actually take the psychiatric medications away from some of these gangsters so they could use them against other gangs. They'd say, "Oh, that guy over there, he's thinking about killing you. You better go finish him off first." And they get supernaturally strong.
Yeah.
They just, I mean, I've seen prisoners do things that were just not humanly possible.
Right.
Because of these entities in them. They give them the energy from somewhere. I don't know where they get it, but one guy, they pepper sprayed him half to death. Then they shot him for these 50,000 volt stun guns. It didn't stop him. And then they sicked the dogs on him. It was the dogs that finally brought him down. But it was superhuman what he did. It was just unbelievable. He stood up to all of that, where any single incident would have taken the biggest prisoner down. It was just amazing.
Can you talk about number 28? I'll stop sharing so we can see our faces and we can answer questions. There's a bunch of stuff going on right now, but can you talk about 28? Because I really want to understand.
Where I ran into that is when I, after I retired from the prison and I could speak, kinda, and I was working psych crisis in hospital emergency rooms all over Tucson, virtually every hospital here. Now, what I was doing, I was trying to figure out who I could tell what these things were and how much I could tell them without them going to squeal to a nurse or psychology or psychiatry or to get me in trouble. So the ones that I felt I could trust to actually reveal what the voices were. When I was about to do that, when the voices sensed it, they went off like firecrackers.
Yeah.
I mean, they just got very volatile. One gal ran out of the room and started running around the day room. That it's a very dangerous time when you go to expose them. They don't want the person to know what they are, what they're doing, or anything about them. They want them to think it's them. And when you go to expose them, they get very agitated. And I got to where I could actually feel them attacking. It was like I've never felt anything like it before. It's this icky electrical energy. You just feel it. And the stronger it is, the angrier they get. And there were times where I felt like whatever field I had around my body that was protecting me, they had pushed it down to like a billionth of an inch above my skin. And I always wondered what would happen if that field broke, because it was like they were trying to get in. It was spooky.
Do you guys remember? I'm literally Googling it right now as I'm talking to you guys. Holy crap, it just came up. Do you guys remember? I know one of you, if not all of you, remember this movie. It was with Barbara Hershey, and it was 1982, The Entity. Did you guys ever see that movie?
The Exorcist?
No. It's called The
No,
Entity.
I didn't see it.
If you guys have not seen that movie, you should literally, by the way, everyone watching this, you should watch that movie as soon as possible. It's from 1982. It is about what we're talking about. So
Is it?
Hollywood has portrayed this before.
Is that the one where she's raped by the entity in the room?
Yes. Yeah, it holds her down. And by the way, this is based on a true story.
Oh,
Yeah.
well,
Actually,
I've seen that a number of times with the patients I dealt with. It's fairly common.
Well, so check this out. So at the end of the movie, I'm kind of giving it away, but it's still worth watching. I'm actually going to find it myself and watch it again because it was so profound. It's not that scary. There's a couple of scenes where the entity shows up and holds her down, and then finally a guy sees it and he's just frozen in shock. That's like the scariest moment in the movie. But at the end, they believe her, and she gets a bunch of psychiatric, technically mafia people to bring in all their sensitive equipment and stuff to record the events when these things happen. And they tried to freeze it. What is that stuff they use? Ammonium nitrate or whatever, when they try to freeze an entire, and they did freeze it. And it broke out. And honestly, this is based on a true story. So this entity literally broke out of this gigantic freezer, ammonium nitrate. I mean, they caught it and it broke out. But I remember watching that movie, and I was, it was 1982, so I was 12 years old, but I was like absolutely blown away. I probably watched it 3 or 4 years later when I was a little bit older, but I was just like, there's no explanation for this movie. And it always fascinated me watching that because I was like, what is this? But, listening to you guys and reading your book, I mean, this is the story. So for all of you guys, Google it and look it up. You can see it's from 1982. It's 1 hour and 55 minutes, but it's an absolutely unbelievable movie. So they were telling us in 1982. About these things.
I remember the first time I saw The Exorcist. I was still working at the big psych hospital in Georgia, and I was so shook up after watching that. We drove to Atlanta to go see it. I missed the turnoff on the expressway.
Wow.
I was really shook up by it because it was very close to some of the patients I was sealing and dealing with.
I didn't see that movie because I had a feeling what it was, and I was already being exposed to that stuff. I didn't need any more of it, so I didn't see that movie.
By the way, so there's a big Wikipedia entry, and we know they control technology. But I mean, it's all in there, guys. You guys can all about this. It's all really is based on a true story. It even has what was the creature in it, a violent and visible ghost or demon that shared similar qualities to the medieval incubus as well as poltergeist. Don't you love how they always tell us about poltergeist? Now, obviously, everybody saw Poltergeist.
Yeah.
That movie, but they're always, again, when I say they, it's like you said, Jerry, it's them. They control the backdrop of this third dimensional matrix illusion control system, whatever you want to call it. They literally do control it. Yeah. And the only way we have our own power here is to not allow, I call it the vibration of victimhood, to, create fear and instill fear. And it's so hard because the narrative is everything is fear-based. I mean, you guys remember growing up, what did they do to us in school? They would make us go out and practice nuclear bomb drill.
Oh yeah, duck and cover.
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta listen to this. I should play this for you guys today because they do the same shit. It's just different now for our kids. My 15-year-old daughter, she goes to high school at a really good high school in Florida, and away from the what. And I get messages from their school now about how they subject them to routine metal detector searches. They just get all the kids up and they just say, okay, we're coming through with a dog and a metal detector.
Oh, for crying out loud.
They do that to a 14-year-old girl. And I get the messages from the high school like they're telling me that it's like safe and it's for your protection. I mean, imagine what kind of trauma you're putting into these kids.
So
there's a big movement now. I was just reading a report the other day that there's a huge movement in this country to homeschool kids if you can. And it's much larger than I thought it was. I mean,
I homeschooled my kids for 3 years. Yeah. Rebecca knows this. And I finally sent him to Florida to be with my ex because that's like one of the last states. I mean, the South has a lot of states, but the whole West Coast was you got to get V'd. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know what we've done to the children and the youth of this world since the last 3 years, but I mean, I have to think that a lot of these kids, I mean, you guys already know what the V program before this V was, where they were giving them 72 shots and, you know, it's just insane. My daughters have never once ever had a needle touch them. Not a
Well,
single shot.
that's wonderful. Yeah.
Good.
Jay,
good.
going back to the whole like story of the the movie, the entity. I actually have a close friend who is a nurse. She grew, I believe that, you know, like I said, if you have someone living in the home, like she had a older brother who was in his teens already drinking, drugging, and she was younger. And at about 12 years old, she was aware of an entity that would try to come into her body at night. And she's just she's a tough cookie, and she somehow was able to, you know, keep it out of her. And luckily she didn't dip her toe into the drugs and the alcohol that her brother invited her to. So I think her aura and energy stayed strong. Actually, I think she was about 15 when it started, but it's really interesting that you can be living in a house with someone else who has them. And if, you know, again, why does it go to some people and others it doesn't? I can't say for sure, but I think that they'll try to attach to you.
Oh,
know.
yeah. They affect the whole family. They upset the whole family. And you know, Sherry came up that one of the things you need to be aware of, it's how do you detect when they're around? You know, how does a normal person detect when they're around? Sherry came up with the thought, every negative thought about yourself or anybody else comes from them.
Yeah, that's actually what I've observed and what in my own life. And I mean, there's some pretty bad people out there, and there's no doubt about that. So if you hear okay, this person is bad, and you know who we're talking about, that's in the news. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the little gossipy things that, you know, you'll hear in your head, or you'll hear in your mind, and you're hear somebody else say something that's real gossipy and kind of, you know, not a good thing. You know, that's the entities trying to put some negativity into your life. You don't have to believe. In fact, since you know that they're liars, what works for me and what's worked for an awful lot of other people, we've found out, Jerry and I, That's a Lie program works really, really well. I mean,
you know, and it works because it doesn't directly, like you were saying, Rebecca, when you know, when you fight, when you resist, what you resist persists.
Right.
You know, so you can't get rid of them by resisting them. Sherry's program that you know, I already knew the basics because I saw that they were liars before I ever met Sherry, and I would tell people that. But Sherry made it into a study. I mean, she's got the That's a Lie program where, you know, you repeat one, you know, 98% of what they say is lies. And if you just go, that's a lie, that's a lie, it doesn't resist them, it just deflects them.
Right.
So if they can't get you to believe anything they're telling you because they're consummate liars, then they can't get their hooks in you. They're like fishermen. They'll bait a hook, they'll throw it into your mind and go, well, can we get him here? And if you bite on it, they reel you in and then they drain you.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah, and if you call them out as liars, then you're not giving them fear-based frequency, so they have nothing to eat. So if you keep doing that, they have the choice of either staying and starving, or leaving and go find somebody else. So you know, that's the way it works. And so the other thing that I also found is very powerful, once the person has gone through the That's a Lie program and has been successful with it, is to start sending them love energy, you know.
Yeah.
And so now I just say, you know, I send you love, and that's the end of it.
well, if you can do that, it's like burning them with a blowtorch.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
So,
a lot of people can't do that. The other thing to watch for is the intention of the thought. You know, is that your intention or is that their intention?
mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
And the intentions are pretty clear. You know, they'll suggest you do all these horrible things. Is that your intention? No, for the most part.
And you can just say, well, that's a lie.
Yeah, that's a
That
lie.
thought that's in my head is a lie. That's not me. That's not coming from me. That's not my thought. It can go back to where it came from.
And it's critical that you understand that not all the thoughts that come into your head belong to you.
Yeah.
These things they insert thoughts in your thought stream, and those thoughts sound just like the other thousands of thoughts that go through your mind on a normal day,
Mhm.
except the content is far different than what you would normally entertain.
Right.
You know, and the stronger they get, the louder it gets, the more persistent it gets, the more frequent it gets, until they completely take you over. They keep chipping away at the control that you have over yourself. And they want to isolate you from everybody. It's the same kind of thing that we do with cattle. You know, you put a cow out to pasture to feed, the farmer brings it in, isolates it, milks it, sends it back out again. That's exactly what they're doing to us. You know,
Yeah.
we eat, we generate energy. They have to turn it negative in order to feed off it. So they put all these negative thoughts and all this garbage in your head. They turn your emotional state negative, and then they drain you. And I've had a number of schizophrenics say they could actually feel their energy leaving while these things were attacking them.
Yeah.
And that's a true statement. I've had the energy just leave me. And I'm sure that if you've experienced, either one of you, Rebecca or Jay, have experienced these things, I'm sure you've noticed some sort of an energy drain afterwards when they're done. You know, I mean, that's their food. That's what they need to exist. So if we don't, and see, they have no power of their own. The only power they have is what we give them.
Right.
The only sustenance they have is what we give them. And if everybody knew that, they would have no place to be but gone from this planet. You know, so I know that's not a realistic idea, but I'm seeing more people waking up to this and not being fearful anymore. They're being frustrated, which is also a negative energy, but they're not being fearful like a couple of years ago. You know, that's what I'm seeing.
That's what they want to generate, is fear and tumult and anxiety, every negative emotion they possibly can generate. And that's why they constantly tell lies. They constantly feed you negative stuff about yourself and everybody else. They want you isolated. They don't want you to have friends. They don't want you to have family. They don't want you to have any human connections. They want you locked in a room, isolated, staring at the ceilings and listening to their bull crap all day as they drain you.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I have experienced that energy drain. It's almost just like this feeling of just like all the energy just going out of your body, and even like a vertigo in a way. And then I have it a couple times. Well, the first time it happened to me with the sweet little lady, and at that one, I really don't even know, like, other than I hypnotized her, and then I felt this sense of like that was the way to like keep me away from the host, or I tried to hypnotize her. A few times what I've seen with them is the parasite, whatever it is, will not let me hypnotize the person, because then I'm going to get in and they don't want me in. They want to maintain control.
Right. I ran into the same thing with using the MACE energy method. Is they will block it. They will try to stop the person from forming an image. They'll try to stop you from getting in there and getting rid of the traumas that they've had.
Yeah.
They actively resist it over and over. I first noticed the energy drain on myself when I was working with the criminally insane in the prison. If I worked with more than 2 of them a day, I would come home drained. I couldn't get anything done at night. I was just so energetically drained. I just sat down and, you know, in front of the TV and didn't do anything physical. You know, and I didn't know what that was for years. And I just made a resolution not to work with any more than 2 of them on any one day, because it was a consistent effect.
I actually did have from that lady, I ended up that night in the emergency room. I was having extreme stomach cramps, like I was about to give birth, and they could find nothing wrong with me. I wasn't menstruating. In fact, they actually treated me like I was a hypochondriac. And I didn't until later then kind of intuitively figure out that I thought that that was what had happened, is the entity had attacked me. And then it was confirmed when I was working with the client I mentioned who was a pornography addict, and I started to hypnotize him. And the same thing happened. I got this wave of like hot, like I'm going to pass out, nauseous, like I'm going to throw up. And I immediately just stopped and excused myself. And I walked out into the bathroom and just like drank a bunch of water. And I came back in and I sat down and I said, this is a weird question, and I hope you're okay with it, but do you think that you might have entities attached to you? He didn't blink an eye and he said yes. And I'm like, that's what this is. So for me, I've had that a couple of times where it actually was a physical attack. So I don't know if you guys have had anything other than the energy drain, but.
Well, I've had one where they almost killed me. It was like a week or two before I was about to go for the first time on the Freeman Fly show. And I was in Mexico. You know, everything was going fine. I went to bed one night. In the morning, I woke up and I could not move my arm. It was frozen and it was getting worse, and it hurt like the dickens. So I got back to Tucson, went to the emergency room, and they hospitalized me right away. There was a staph infection that broke out in my right shoulder. I've never had anything like that. I didn't injure that right shoulder. There was nothing wrong with it. It was just overnight, boom, it knocked me out for 6 months.
It wasn't a spider bite or anything like that.
No, nothing like that. No accident, no nothing. It just came out of nowhere. But I couldn't keep my appointment to talk to Freeman. He waited 6 months for that to recover. And then I went on and said, you're going to have to kill me, buzzards.
Well, so all of what you guys are talking about, and again, this is something I've only told like really close family or inner circle. So both of my daughters, as I told you guys, have never been vaccinated. There's never been a needle. They've never been sick a day in their life. They've never been in any connection to any of this allopathic demonic sorcery. And when my first daughter was born, Alexandra, who's now almost 15, she's actually turns 15 next week. I swear to you guys, you know, this is, I literally like have to calm myself down just talking about this, because bringing this back to me is just insane. But we signed all the documentation. This is back in 2008 when she was born. And we signed all the documentation. Of course, this is Huntington Hospital in Pasadena, California, very renowned hospital. And we're not getting vaccinated, right? We've opted out, religious objection or whatever it was back then, when you could still do that in the state of California. Well, guys, I swear to you, my ex-wife had a planned C-section, cesarean delivery. And, you know, it was scheduled. It was like 7:30 in the morning. And, you know, we're in the room and the doctor, there's a nurse and a female physician performing the surgery. And she comes out and, you know, we're so excited and happy and elated. And we're just like at this, you know, the top of the world, consciously feeling joy. And all of a sudden, this tall, sinister, I'll just call it a being, because at that point, you know, in my life, you know, I wasn't where I'm at now frequency wise, but I sensed danger. I sensed there's not something right with this. And it was like a guy who, you know, was wearing a lab coat, you know, so he was kind of like designed or disguised as a physician. And I'm like, excuse me, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm here to give the baby her shots. And I literally looked at him, you guys, I'm not kidding you. I literally looked at him and I said, I was professional initially. I said, you guys know I'm a big guy. I was like, you don't understand. We opted out. We're religious exemption. We're not getting vaccinated. And he says, oh no, I'm here to give the baby shots. And I literally then like said, oh, really? And I got like right up in his face and I said, if you attempt to inject my daughter, I'm going to kill you.
Good for
At
you.
that point, the
wonderful.
doctor who was in the room with my wife, who was, you know, just coming out of like, you know, epidural and all that stuff, or not epidural, whatever they give her before you give you they cut him open, was like, Jay, what are you doing? It's okay. And I'm like, no, it's not okay. And I'm like staring at this person. And you guys, I'm telling you, as God is my witness, it was not a human being. It was some sort of demonic, energetic NPC, you know, call it a replicant, call it something that was in this room to inject my daughter over, you know, even though we had opted out. And, you know, you could talk to any parents who've had similar stories, and they'll always tell you, yeah, that experience was very weird. But most people like just kowtow and say, oh, and step away, and then they get their baby injected.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was like very anti-vaccine, at that point in my life, and was very educated about them. And I was like, you don't understand. And at that point, the doctor that was the woman that was administering to my daughter grabbed my arm and she said, it's okay. And she got up, she's wearing her surgical outfit and everything, and said, you can leave now. They're not going to be vaccinated. And the guy just looked at her like, oh, I'm going to still vaccinate. I mean, you guys, I was definitely ready to lay down my life. I was going to kill that person. I mean, I was literally insane. Like, get out of here, and here's the craziest part of the story. 2 years later, when I had my daughter, Gabriella, no one showed up. And even weirder, and it was the same thing, right? Like, I had already signed her and we're opting out. The woman that was delivering her was a different woman, the same hospital, but a different woman at this time. My ex still had the same maternity doctor, but she wasn't there. It was the other person that was doing the C-section. She said, oh, wow, so you guys don't do the vax, just like out of the blue. And I was like, no, but why? And she's like, well, it's just interesting that, nobody came. And I'm like, what does that mean? Nobody came. And she's like, well, usually there's a physician that comes down to the room. So it was like, they knew I wasn't the guy to trifle with. You're not going to get away with it with me. It's all like, it's like a form of, I'll just use the word satanic, but it really is like some form of satanic mind control that people in these hospitals go under, especially, newborn parents or parents that, are having newborns, and they just inject them.
Yeah.
There's probably a note in that file to remind them of your, how you were with your first child. So this is somebody you don't mess with.
I mean,
wish
guys,
I had
I'm serious. That person that was in that room was not human.
Mhm.
It was, and if it was human,
Get a baseball
human
cap.
body,
The sun's going down in my eyes.
oh, you're okay, no problem. But if it was a human in a human physical body, it was definitely under the influence of these beings.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I wish I had known about the vaccines when my children were born, but I didn't, I mean.
Very few
Yeah.
people did. Very few.
No, I mean, because my children were born in the 60s.
Yeah.
And, the doctors, I had been raised to think that the doctors were the gods, and they knew it, they were
Right.
smarter than everybody else on the
course.
planet. And
Yeah, they're
whatever
still
they
pushing
said,
that.
whatever they said was, what you did. How many times have I heard, do what the doctor says?
Right. The lab coat
The
guy.
doctor says. Yeah, so all my children were vaccinated, but back in the 60s and the early 70s, the kids weren't getting nearly as many shots.
No, yeah, it was a totally different deal. Well, so look, I've said this, and Rebecca and I have talked about this many, many times. I know you know this, Rebecca. It is just my personal opinion, and I would say it's a knowing at this point now, knowing what they've done in the last 2.5 years, that was the way to keep consciousness from shifting, right? Suppress these young, beings that are reincarnating, coming back here to make sure that we raise the field. And the only way we can keep them from not waking up and raising the field is by injecting them with these lethal, toxic potions or substances. And now, obviously, they've developed that to the place of, again, the guy today, Tom, that was on my podcast talking about, there's a woman out there. I don't know if you guys know this person. I know, Stephanie, if you're still watching, she is Karen Kingston. But she has proven that the mRNA is a self-replicating structure. And it is literally building essentially biobots. So this guy's argument today was, we don't have to wait for Ray Kurzweil. I know, Rebecca, how many times you and I talked about that over the last 2 years. We don't even have to wait for Ray Kurzweil or Peter Diamandis' theory of the singularity to happen. They've already forced it upon the people who have been vaccinated. They are now cyborgs. They have turned into man-machine. And again, if you guys want, I'm gonna let these guys answer your questions here in a second, but I'll find her work. You can follow her on Substack. But I mean, she is the most brilliant researcher on the planet. And she's, like I said, she's proven that all of these things are self-replicating structures that are now in the cellular, biofield of humanity, at least people that have been injected 2, 3, 4 times. And what that ultimately means, nobody knows. But I mean, I don't think any of us think it's benevolent.
Well, look what they've done now. They've added it to the regimen of vaccines, the
Insane.
COVID vaccine for babies, for kids to
yeah.
get.
Unreal.
You know, it's murder. It's absolute murder.
It is murder. It's
Yeah.
premeditated murder. In my
Premeditated murder. And the FDA and the CDC are behind it.
They're all in on it.
They're
Yeah.
all in on it. That's right. They're all in on it.
Yeah,
They
and I
want-
wouldn't
they
be
want us dead.
surprised if what they're all infected and infestated with these
Themselves.
entities. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're, you know, maybe maybe some of them are aware of it, maybe some of them are not.
I think they are. I think that I think that's it. I think that most of these people are zombies. They're just basically, you know, again, lackey stool pigeons under the influence of some of these like archdemons or arch archons or whatever they are. And then some of them have just been turned,
Yeah.
right, through their lifestyle. You know, it's like, you know, you guys know this, but it's like, and again, Rebecca, how many times we talk about this? Sugar poisoning, alcohol poisoning, drug poisoning, porn addictions. I mean, all of these things violate the energy field.
Mhm.
And once the energy field is at such a low point, anyone is subject to being, you know, let's just call it invaded.
Yeah.
And
You
look
know,
what
why
they're
these
saying
people-
about Davos now. They said all the escort services are full up. The prostitutes are in full board.
Yeah,
You know, look
Yeah.
what these people are doing over there. You know, these are the controllers of the planet.
It's unreal.
well, they would like to think they're the controllers of the planet, and I don't think they are the controllers of the planet. I think their ideas are bound to fail from a structural engineering point of view. And I mean, I just don't see that there's pie in the sky. I call them pie in the sky ideas. They're really nice ideas, you know, airy fairy type of here's how it's going to be. Never mind that most of the people have to die to get there. And then all the money's going to go into our pockets and it's not going to be shared with anybody else. Never mind that stuff. You know, I mean, their design is not going to work.
No.
You can't force an entire planet to obey
Right.
because there's enough of us who will not.
Right.
Yeah, look
Well,
what's
it's already
happening in
happened.
France right now.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
they're
it's already
just all
happening.
over.
It's already happening. I want to, if you guys are okay, if you're kind enough, you know, we'll go another 15 minutes or so. I want to answer a couple of questions from some of the audience. So Judith Buckholz asks, and any one of you guys can answer this. What do you believe happens to the soul if a person kills themselves?
Oh, they got to come back.
Yeah.
Yep, they got to come back and do it over again. Same thing. They don't get out of nothing.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I've done,
oh, excuse me, Rebecca, go
oh yeah,
ahead.
that's okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I've done thousands of past life regressions. So I do believe in reincarnation, and I do believe that that definitely they will have to come back. And sometimes though, the suicide isn't all about like, now I messed up, I made the mistake. What I've seen is sometimes the suicide was chosen on a soul level because the aftermath is so dark and heavy for the family members that are left behind. And, you know, and it could be that one of those, let's say the mother in a past life was responsible for leading people into the gas chambers in Dachau, and, you know, ushered all these people into basically killing themselves essentially by walking. And then now this mother has to experience a child committing suicide. So it's really complex. It's what I've seen in that way. It's not always like that the soul has failed, so to speak. You know, it can be bigger than that. It could be a soul contract.
Like a soul journey.
Yeah.
I know that I remember when I was, I think I was either 3 or 5 years old. It was after a particular session, a mind control session that I had gone through. And I remember sitting on my bedroom floor and I said out loud, but I whispered because it was nighttime, I don't want to do this again. So I didn't want to do this lifetime again. Because so I even at that age, I had the idea that I had been here before. I didn't remember the past, but it had that feeling of I've been here before. I've done this again and I don't want to do it again. You know, I just don't want to do this again. So I think that, maybe whatever we're supposed to be learning, if we don't learn it in one lifetime, we have to, continue on so we can become the wonderful beings that we really are. I don't really know, but I do believe that we do come back, and I don't intend to come back this next time.
So I'm in agreement with you guys. I don't even say it. I don't believe in reincarnation. I know it exists. I've had so many profound experiences in my life that just shows me, not just from my own internal introspection and meditation and contemplation, but just seeing things now from a different perspective. And then really understanding, like, because I know you guys know this, but there's just no coincidences. Everything is connected.
Right.
Like every single thing that happens to us is part of the divine aspect of consciousness, right? Because like you guys already said earlier, all we really are is energy beings. And as energy beings, we're all connected because energy is eternal. It's infinite. It can't be contracted or destroyed, right? So it's like technically we're all somewhat in some shape or form connected. And I just know that, it's part of like it's an evolution of the universe, of the cosmos itself, for us as, again, call us spirits. Because I kind of see this soul as like the quantum computer, or the, think of it as like the Akashic record of all of our lifetimes, right? So it's like at the end of every physical body incarnation, I'm certain that we do have like a life review. Many people that write about this stuff talk about this, but we really do. And then I think what, source or God or, consciousness itself, the ultimate creator force does is allows us as these divine, energy beings to see through the eyes of all the people that we just interacted with in that past life, in that field. And when we then are exposed to, like, and again, no one's perfect, right? There's sometimes we do horrible things to people, and sometimes we do it inadvertently because we're just not conscious, at an early age in lifetime, but we see and we feel and we experience like how that person felt, in our energy field and working with us and connected with us. And I feel like every single time you come back, and regardless of what role you played in that past life, you come back at a little bit higher niche or etch. And that, you learned in that life review, like, because you feel these horrible negative experiences that you were, giving off to other people that you were not aware of, maybe consciously. And so that helps that spirit, move up that little bit, or even maybe great, because I do think too, that some spirits come here and maybe they only come back once or twice and they learn everything they have to learn in that short amount of time. Whereas others are so low, in some sort of frequency state. And like you said, Rebecca, they get they have ancestral trauma, and they have mind control issues. They're in government programs. You guys know how bad our government is and what they do to people. So some people just, unfortunately, through karma or through just, I would say somewhat of is chance, are in really bad places, and then just it takes them a lot longer to evolve than other people who maybe might evolve once or twice. I mean, again, some of these ascended beings that have written books, there's Ramtha, there's Seth, there's all these different people. They say that everybody has hundreds, if not thousands, of lifetimes to evolve. For the spirit to truly evolve and to experience the dark side and to experience the light side. And so it's like, it's just a constant game, an evolutionary game, so to speak, of experiencing the experience, so that really the cosmos itself, call it God, call it the universe, call it creation force, call it scalar energy, whatever, evolves with it. Because every experience is a benefit of the experience. You can't say that to Christians. You can't say that to people in, Abrahamic religions, because they're like, God is in the sky sitting on a golden chalice judging you, and he knows everything already.
Right.
So you can't
That's
say
how I grew up.
Well, yeah, we all did. I mean, I
Yeah,
was raised
yeah.
Catholic too. I mean, my
Yeah, me
dad's
too.
still that way. And he still goes to the lab coat God and listens to the lab coat God.
Wow.
Because the
Yeah.
lab coat God knows everything.
Yeah, so I was I spent some time in a Catholic orphanage, and was raised by the Catholic nuns, and we had to go. They were very, very strict. In fact, they were pretty abusive. I mean, you've heard of the orphanages, right? So yeah,
The Catholic religion to me is
yeah.
I mean, I was raised Catholic and, most of my family still is, and that is the most, how do I say it? That is the most cultistic form of mind control, I think, on planet Earth.
Yeah, and it, once a person recovers from that, then their whole world opens up. It's
Yeah,
like
exactly.
all of that stuff was a lie,
Right.
which tells me that, okay, all of that stuff was run by the archons.
Right. Right.
For
Well,
lack
the
of a better,
Jesuit. Think of the Jesuit.
lack of a better term,
That's
meaning
exactly
the
right.
dark side. Yeah,
But think of the
Jesuit.
Jesuit system, Sherry.
Sure.
You know that statement, right? The Jesuit priest would say, "You give me a 4-year-old boy and I'll make him a man."
Yeah, I'll tell you who the man is. Yeah, sure. Yeah,
mean,
that's because of our the way that we're made when we're born here. How our brains are so malleable up until the age of around 7 years old. And so we're in a hypnotic state in that particular age. So everything we see and everything we experience, we take in as true. Because we don't know any better. This is apparently, according to Dr. Bruce Lipton, this is how we're designed to learn how to communicate and how to survive on this planet.
Yeah.
That's why our brains are, because I wonder, well, why would we be given brains that are so malleable that get us in so much trouble? Because, we don't know the difference. We're believing everything we see and hear.
Well, if you think
But
about it,
he says that it's how we learn our language and how we learn how to communicate with other people. And so, if we were around good people and we learned good things, well, then no harm done. But
that's right.
But that's not the case. So,
Very
so we have a
rarely.
lot to unlearn by the time we're 7 years old.
Very rarely. All right, I'm going to rapid fire some questions to you guys. So Clifford Ure asks, Jay, amazing show. I assume these entities are no different from those which possess people, which normally requires an exorcist or a Catholic priest. Here we go, Catholics, to aid in getting rid of them. Agree or not? And if different, how so?
Well, what I've seen and the few cases I've seen that there were exorcists, they can get rid of them. But if they don't change their frequency, if they don't move on a positive spiritual path, it's just like the Bible says, they will come back and they'll come back with reinforcements. I've seen it over and over and over again where we got rid of them. They're gone. The guy thought he was cured. Everything was fine. He didn't have to do anything else. And bam, they came back with reinforcements, and and it was twice as bad after that.
Yeah. So the answer is frequency. Are you living your life in service to your fellow man? Are you creating in harmony or in resonance at your highest and best capacity every single day? Are you engaging in, low vibration activities? Like you said, Rebecca, and you guys all mentioned, do you have addictions? Do you spend your time at night in bars getting wasted? I mean, who was it, Rebecca, that we talked to that said that, they were so precognitive that they could literally go to a bar and they could see the malevolent archontic entities like hanging above the quote unquote bar flies, waiting for them to get drunk, and then they would just dive bomb into them and take over their consciousness.
Yep, I've heard that too.
So, what I've been seeing now is, now they've legalized marijuana and everyone is taking the gummies now, the marijuana gummies. And so it's like, I know several people just out and about that they'll take their Ritalin during the day. And then if they go out on the weekend, they're drinking, and then they take a gummy and they're just
gone.
Oh, wow.
And those people, to me, their aura has to be weakening.
Yeah.
Weakening. And they're just, so I think the whole legalizing marijuana and everyone doing gummies now, well, it's legal, so it's okay, but it's not. I mean, and it would be the same way too, I think, with some, and you guys probably would agree with this, with some of the medications, prescribed prescription medications. I think those weaken your aura as well.
All the SSRIs.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Psychiatry won't tell the people how dangerous these antipsychotic drugs they are prescribing actually are. They actually will rot your brain away till it turns into a walnut, and they found that with autopsies over and over again with people who've been on those antipsychotic drugs for years. They destroy your brain with long-term use. They rot out your peripheral nervous system. You think they'll mention that to their patients? No.
No,
that's right.
because their education doesn't, their education is infiltrated by this dark side. So
Right,
that's, they
right.
learned.
Well, like you
They
said,
learned how to
they
be gatekeepers.
legalized marijuana. That's who it is, Sherry. They is the infrastructure of our third dimensional system, which needs to collapse and be, inverted or blown up or subverted from the inside out. One last question. I'm gonna let you guys find out how people can work with you and connect with you and stuff before we end this. But Rick Nelson says, and I think we have the answer, but he says, what are safe walls or other means that we can all do to use or build to avoid these entities in the first place?
Watch your thoughts.
Right. Exactly. Guard your thoughts.
Be aware that if there's any thought that is not within your normal intention, that they're not coming from you.
I would say do whatever you can to look at managing your thoughts, become the master of your body and mind. And so, yeah, even anxious thinking, it's not necessarily the truth. And train your mind to, like a muscle, to stay in a positive vein of thought. Of course, it's not going to be 100%, but the stronger you are in maintaining positivity in your thinking and in, when emotions come up, work through them. They're going to come in, but it's the ones that are toxic are the ones that you suppress or don't work through, and they hang with you and create that low vibration that goes on and on. So do whatever you can to stay at that level and learn it, because we're not taught this. They don't want us to learn those things, because then we are more weak and susceptible.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, those are all awesome answers. I'm only going to give you guys one, and everybody knows what it is. Raise your frequency, raise your vibration. It literally is that simple. Hang out with people that are actually real people who actually enhance you as a human being. You guys know the whole statement, you're only as strong as your 5 closest friends, right? Like, I mean, in reality, you cannot continue to hang out with people who are invaded or / living in low vibration. And we all have those friends. When they come into a room, they suck the air out of the room. They're energy vampires, they're parasitic themselves. I mean, most of these people are under the influence. So it's pretty simple. All you have control over is yourself, and obviously the reactions or the response that you have to what goes on around you. So never react out of fear, choose to respond out of love. It's that simple. I mean, it's not simple, but it's simple to act that way in your life. And so, I just say, first off, I appreciate all of you guys coming on today. This has been an absolutely profound podcast. Jerry, if somebody wants to connect with you or work with you right now, what is the easiest way for them to do that?
Well, they can go to my website and there's a contact there. It's jerrymarzinsky.com, or they can write me at jmarz and the number 1 at outlook.com. And I do work with people who are having trouble with voices. And we've got a number of successes.
That's awesome. Sherry, what about you?
My website is keyholejourney.com. I'm in the process of changing that site. It'll probably keep the same name, but I'm kind of messing around with it. So if it doesn't look quite right, that's because I'm in there making some changes. But there's a contact page that people can reach me and ask questions. And if it's something that is specific to schizophrenia, I will send it to Jerry. Otherwise, then I'll go ahead and respond.
That's so awesome. Stephanie has a comment I'll read in a second. Rebecca is RebeccaTaylorShaw.com. Rebecca has worked with me personally. She's worked with my daughter. I don't know how many people I've sent to her. She's absolutely amazing. She runs the Charleston Hypnosis Center. So guys and gals, again, on the recording, because a lot of people will watch this on the recording, these are all 3 of the most profound researchers on the planet. I highly, highly, and strongly recommend that you purchase their book, which is Journey into a Psychotic Mind, or whatever the book is. I mean, I have it over here. I've probably read it 100 times.
It's an amazing journey into the psychotic
An
mind.
amazing journey into the psychotic mind.
Breaking the spell of the ivory tower. And by the way, I want to tell you that we now have the book translated into the German language.
Awesome.
And into Spanish. The Spanish language is going through the proof of copy right now. So it ought to be available to the public in the next few weeks, I think. Like that.
That's awesome. Congratulations on that, guys.
Yeah, we're
That's
also
how I got
having-
today. That's how he knew, because he's in Germany. And he speaks fluent German, so I think pretty sure that the book he was showing me was the German version.
Okay. Oh, that's wonderful. So we're also having it translated into the French language and into Russian.
Awesome. So you guys, it's all on Amazon. Go pick it up. Let me just read Stephanie. She said, "Thank you, everyone. I can confirm personally pulled off quite a few schizophrenics in my office. They are fascinating once they know you see them and they know you can throw them out." So namaste, guys and gals. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. If I can help you in any way. And for all of you guys watching, remember, raise your vibration to optimize your love creation. We'll see all of you guys very soon. You guys, I'll reach out to you. I got to jump.
Okay.
Take care. Good
Bye.
night.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.